So good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the viewers. I'm Avinash Singh and on behalf of RPG Life Sciences, I welcome all for today's webinar on COVID vaccination in cancer patients. To talk more on this, we have with us one of the renowned radiation oncologists in India, Dr. Kanika Sharma as our guest speaker for today. Welcome ma'am and thank you for joining us. To give a brief introduction about Kanika ma'am, Dr. Kanika ma'am is currently associated as a director and clinical lead radiation oncology at Dharmshila Narayan Super Specialty Hospital, New Delhi. She has done her MBBS and MD radiotherapy and has rich experience of more than 13 years in this field. Dr. Sharma specializes in radiation oncology and has interest in brachytherapy to all subsites. She is a member of various prestigious institutions such as Association of Radiation Oncologists of India, Indian Society of Oncology, Indian Society of Brachytherapy, Oncology Forum, and European Society for Therapeutic Radiology and Oncology. Moreover, she has close to 40 publications in national and international journals as well. Apart from this, she has also received numerous awards and recognition. So without any further ado, I welcome Dr. Kanika ma'am and would request her to please carry forward the session. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you for your kind introduction. I think the words which matter most are the effect of our awareness which we want to create in people. I think all awards go under the belt if we are not able to give the public what we actually should be giving. That is the clear messages in current times that what should be our healthy behavior in current times, how we should be handling ourselves in such testing times. So I think you have very appropriately given me a topic which is close to my heart, because this is what people ask us day in and day out, is what should we be doing about the vaccination in cancer patients? Because left, right, and center, we understand the biggest tool in our hand to get rid of this pandemic, apart from our COVID appropriate behavior, is the vaccination. But there are fears and there are a lot of myths pertaining to it. And I think in the next 30-40 minutes, we will try to understand about these myths as well as the apprehensions people have in their mind with relation to this vaccine. So COVID-19, we know, has been in our country for almost 1.5 quarter to 2 years. And fortunately, early on this year, we have an effective vaccination which is in place. But still, there is a lot of trepidation and hesitation in all the public, particularly the cancer patients, whether they should go for this vaccination, what would be the efficacy, and are they going to have a poorer outcome if they go for the vaccine, or they will have more side effects. So this is what we would want to highlight in today's talk. So COVID, cancer, when we talk of them together, they are double trouble. So in case a cancer patient gets COVID, then there are so many things which it imposes. First of all, there will be increased risk of severity of disease. There will be stoppage of the active cancer treatment, which can put the patient at a risk of progression of the cancer. So there is a risk of a cancer which is slowly growing in the body. And if COVID comes in, it further increases the risk of the cancer spreading because the treatment is interrupted. And at the same time, because the cancer treatment decreases immunity, then there is an increased risk of developing COVID and the severity is more. So it is apprehended as a double trouble. So it is like a double-edged sword the clinicians are faced with if a patient of cancer develops COVID. So you have to balance both things, that COVID also has to be treated and the cancer should not also go out of hand. So I think vaccination has been the biggest tool in our hand. You cannot, we all know for the last 1.5 years, we cannot have a very magical treatment. There have been drugs which have tested, which have failed in providing the benefit they promised to in the labs, but not so appreciated in the clinic. So rather than treating a COVID, it is better to prevent it. So we will understand what are the risk factors which predispose the person to COVID, how COVID and cancer go hand in hand, how we can prevent it, which is the vaccine which is available, which is the vaccine which we should go for, and then where to give vaccine and what are the contraindications for vaccination in cancer patients, and a bit of myth busting also, because there are a lot of myths pertaining to COVID as well as the vaccination. So who is at the highest risk of getting COVID-19? So if there are 100 people and they are exposed to same infectious agents, all will not get infection. Each person has a different immunity. And these are dictated by our comorbidities, our habits, as well as other physical reserve. So people who are diabetic, who have diseases like cardiovascular disorders, respiratory diseases, obesity, kidney diseases, and added to that, they have a poor lifestyle by virtue of smoking, alcohol consumption, and physical inactivity, that is the sedentary lifestyle, have known to be at higher risk of developing the COVID as well as having higher severity. But amongst all this, the cancer patients are the ones which are the most prone by virtue of their fragile immune system. So it happens to be one of the biggest risk factors which predisposes a person to develop the COVID-19 infection. So they don't go well together, I told you. It has been established in multitudes of studies that if a patient who is a cancer patient, either an actively being treated patient or patient who has been treated within last 6 months, if he develops COVID or she develops COVID, the chances of the patient requiring hospitalization as well as having a bad outcome increases. That is very well highlighted with a few studies which I will talk of later. Second thing, why is it so? There are so many other diseases, there are heart diseases. Why is it just cancer patients are having poorer outcome? It is so because cancer disease per se reduces the immune response of the body. The immune system is hampered. Certain malignancies like leukemias, lymphomas, the white blood cell counts are there, but these are ineffective in fighting infectious agents. Then the therapy which we give, it itself entails that we are going to suppress the immunity. For example, if we are giving chemotherapy, we're doing radiation therapy, the bone marrow is suppressed by these medications as well as radiation. So a suppressed bone marrow entails that the white blood cells will not be able to throw a response which would be otherwise be shown good in a normal person. So the treatment is also reducing the immunity. So by virtue of disease as well as treatment, both factors lead to a poor immune system of a cancer patient. So because of that, there is a higher risk and a decreased ability to fight this particular disease. So these are the studies I was talking of. There are as many as 10 studies across the globe where they have compared in huge number of patients almost up to 4,000 to 3,000, where they have tried to find out that if a person develops COVID, by virtue of him being either cancer patient or a non-cancer patient, what are the chances of dying of COVID? So as you well appreciate, the case fatality rate, that is the chances of dying because of this COVID infection, was higher. The red dots here indicate the patients who had cancer along with COVID, whereas the gray dots reflect here the patients who did not have cancer, had only COVID. So in each study, and there is a drastic difference, you see, the chances of dying in this huge big study with COVID were just 10% versus 30% when it came to patients who have had cancer. So on an average, it is said that if a cancer patient gets COVID, there is a 19% increased risk of fatality, which is a huge number. It is a very, very tremendously huge number, and more disheartening because COVID, we know, is preventable if we are doing the appropriate behavior and with this vaccination available. Similarly, if we talk of the hazard and the odds ratio, when we compare that, which are the patients which would be faring poorer. So the hazard ratio unfavorably goes towards the cancer patients. Very high risk in multitudes of studies. The bigger the dot, the highest number is indicated there. And all the dots towards the right side of the graph are indicating that there is an increased risk, which itself is a validation of the fact that these patients are more fragile. They are like newborns where you have to take care of them with huge discipline as well as a lot of attention to be paid to their immunity. Amongst the cancer patients also, they tried to define that there are some patients who have a higher risk. So all the cancer patients who developed COVID, of those who were males who were aged more than 60 years, had obesity, had history of smoking, had comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease, or had other immunocompromised disorders like HIV, they had a more severe disease and there was a higher chances of death. So it is very much clear here that as a cancer patient, it is important to take COVID very, very seriously in comparison to the rest of the population. So you have to take actions so as to protect yourself from acquiring this disease, because once you acquire, you see the risk of fatality increases. But the only way where you can protect yourself is in the primary phase. So a penny of prevention is definitely better than pounds and pounds of cure. So preventive measures, I think I will be just repeating, which has been repeatedly reinforced by all organizations in the last 1.5 years. Try social distancing. Do not have hugs and handshakes. Try to not going into the crowd. You need to go to the hospital. That is essential for your treatment. But unnecessarily, apart from your hospital visits, do not try to go in public places. Avoid public transport if possible. And if you're using public transport, do not touch the handrails and different things all around. Try to maintain at least a distance of 6 feet from your neighboring passenger. Do not touch your nose, eyes, or mouth repeatedly. Rather, if you have touched it, make it sure you immediately clean your hands. If there is a water and soap source nearby, preferably try to wash them for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water is not available, then use a hand sanitizer. And very simple 8 steps are there where you have to clean the palms as well as the fingers, as well as the space between your fingers. It's just a 15-20 seconds drill, which you should learn and perform if you have touched anything around you when you're in a public place. Use your handkerchief, protect yourself. If you're sneezing, if you're not wearing a mask, try to cover yourself with your elbow. Because when you sneeze in your hand, you are again likely to touch that dirty hand somewhere. This area is less likely to touch the adjoining area. So you're protecting yourself as well as the people around you. And then see what is your immune response. So immune response is something which most people, it is like something where there is no parameter to tell you what is your immune response. So if you have a tendency for repeated coughs and colds and infection, that means you are inherently having a lower immunity. And what are we trying to do with the vaccine? We are trying to build that up. So I'm sure that people have been telling you to eat a lot of healthy foods, which can build your immunity. But the immunity we talk of is your body's ability to fight a particular disease. For example, if there is something which enters into my body through my nose, the body considers it as a foreign body. In response to that foreign body, the white blood cells, they recognize it as an antigen. The antigen presenting cells get attached to that foreign body and report it to the T cells. The T cells find it out that this is something which is not good for my body, and they release certain humoral agents against it, which is manifested in form of the antibodies. So this is basically, in a very simple fashion, I'm trying to tell what your body does in response to when you inhale something which is not right for your body. So this is the immunity we are talking about, which doesn't totally come by virtue of thing. It is your body's innate response. So what these vaccines are doing? So these vaccines are giving something which is similar to that foreign body. That agent which was entering your body normally through the nose, we have just extracted some part of it, which stimulates the immune system in a similar fashion. So rather than acquiring that infection, that infective agent, small fragment, which is not harmful for you, is put into the vaccine and it is put inside your body so that your body throws an immune response to it. So that subsequently, if the actual infective agent enters your nose, your body already has those antibodies to fight with this agent. So that is what the vaccination is doing. So why do we want to do? Because in the last 8-10 slides, I told you that cancer patients are very vulnerable. They have higher mortality, they have higher hospitalization. And secondly, that if they do develop COVID, and if they are not even hospitalized, the active cancer treatment will have to be delayed. Because if a patient is having COVID, the surgery will not be performed, chemotherapy will be withheld, radiation has to be withheld. So the cancer treatment gets delayed. Secondly, we really don't know that how much delay is reasonable. So whether, this pandemic, nobody knows till what time it will go on. So we cannot wait. Cancer cannot wait till the pandemic to go. So that is why it is important to get vaccinated. And side effects are not very marked. Till date, whatever patients have gone for vaccination, their side effects have been similar to the non-cancer patients. And the benefit, risk versus benefit, the benefit amounts to be huge in comparison to the minor side effects which the vaccines cause. So talking of which vaccine, because this is the next question people ask us, that which vaccine to go for. So currently in our country, we have these 3 vaccines available: Covaxin, the Covishield, and the Sputnik 5. It is available across most government sectors. It is free of cost in government sector. In private sector, it is chargeable, and some people have administration charges, some don't. But by and large, 700 to 1200 would be the average cost of the vaccine. Each vaccine is slightly different in terms of its scheduling as well as its efficacy. But having said that, I will also reinforce the fact that whatever efficacy data are coming, they are changing with more and more persons being vaccinated. The data which we had in January was not good enough to talk of which is better, because Covaxin had just come in. Covishield was also not used in our country. Whatever data we were talking of was in the Western world. So these data which I have projected here is an average, but there have been changes, particularly in Covishield. The recent data said that in Indian subcontinent, the efficacy is to the tune of 94%. But by and large, either of the vaccine is having at least 70 to 95% of efficacy. Dosage schedule is different. Covaxin is given in 2 doses, 12 to 16 weeks apart. Covishield is being also given as 2 doses, 12 to 16 weeks apart. Sputnik has 2 doses, but they are at 21 days interval. And any person who's above 18 years of age is eligible to get any of these vaccines. Another question people ask, if I have received first Covaxin, can I go for second Covishield or second Sputnik? So there is no supporting data. As of now, whatever vaccine was given as dose 1 is continued in dose 2, and subsequently, if data comes in for boosters, probably that will be the same vaccine which will be offered. So which to take? I would say it is important to take any one of them. No one is superior to other, at least in the current data. There is always a new information coming about each vaccine every month. So whatever is available to you should be your choice of vaccine. Either of the vaccine, whichever vaccine you take, these are the common side effects which they can bring in, which include pain and redness at the site of injection, which any vaccine anyhow causes: feeling of tiredness, fatigue, headache, fever, chills, muscle pains, joint pains, nausea. And many people also report of certain lymph nodes in the axilla after this vaccination. Rarely, some vaccines have caused the clotting tendencies, particularly Covishield have been attributed towards the side effect. But most clinicians, before you go for vaccine, they would ask you for any anaphylactic history or history of consumption of any drugs which entail higher risk for bleeding or clotting disorders. So as I told you, there is nothing called the best vaccine. So even for Sputnik, which was very, very high rated vaccine, the amount of efficacy it was showing in Russia, the same amount of efficacy hasn't been seen in other countries. So I think there are variation in batches, there are variation in genetic response to these particular vaccines. So as of now, there is no consensus. But whatever data we have, that is the real world data in our country, in the vaccinated healthcare workers particularly, they have shown that both Covishield and Covaxin have provided a high amount of immune response in the recipients. They've been able to protect from severity of disease. Of course, it cannot prevent infections because the virus also mutates. There are different changes happening in the virus, but it is decreasing the intensity of disease or requirement of hospitalization or ventilation in patients who have been vaccinated. And this particular Covishield generates more antibody. This is something which has come in the last month, but I think we are still early on in commenting on to which is better. So it is advised that whatever vaccine is available to you, you should go for that particular vaccine. Now, then there are many things which people ask that we have heard this, is this right? So I think most of the information is hearsay. There are never authentic data to support that this is happening. Like people say that, okay, if you get the vaccine, otherwise I was fine, I did not get COVID, but once I got the vaccine, I developed COVID. So COVID vaccine does not have active virus, as I reinforced in initial slides, that a fragment of the part of that particular antigen is put in the vaccine. The entire virus is not going. It is not a live virus if it is going. It is attenuated virus. So the vaccine does not make you sick. Second thing, people feel that, okay, that I got COVID last year, so I am already immune. It will not happen to me again. That again is a huge mistake, because the immunity, the immune response which your body threw over a period of time, it tends to dissipate. Second thing, as the virus also mutates, the antigen is changing. So your body might have been immune to the COVID-19 virus, which was there last year, but it may not be immune to the one which is prevalent in the current time. So that is why it is important to get vaccinated. And there is a doubt that because these are RNA viruses or DNA viruses, so there will be some genetic changes which it will bring in the body. So the ones, that is why we haven't yet approved below 18 years. Above 18 years, they have not known to cause any such changes. These particular theoretically, the RNA-based studies have been in place since almost 20 years. So this is not a new technology. Since 20 years, such drugs have been in use. So they do not entail any change in your DNA. So this is just to summarize these myths again. So vaccine has been thoroughly tested. It is safe and efficacious. That is why it is being advocated. Anything which is not safe is never given a go ahead by the regulatory bodies. So even if you have vaccine, COVID, you need to get vaccinated. I already clarified that. Third thing is, like, people, once they get vaccinated, they feel that now nothing is going to happen. That is not true. Your discipline or your COVID appropriate behavior should go on exactly the way it was before the vaccine. Because vaccine is not preventing the disease, it is just decreasing the intensity of your body's response or the severity of disease. So you have to continue to use that. Vaccine causes infertility in women? No, there is no study to support that. Previously, the pregnant women were not being given the vaccine, but around 18,000 women were vaccinated in US during pregnancy early on in January. And as per their reports, the vaccine can be safely given even in pregnant women. Even lactating women, the women who are feeding, can very well go for this vaccine. So it will not entail the risk of infertility. And what else we can do? I think once you have got yourself vaccinated, you have to further reduce their chances of exposure by continuing your COVID appropriate behavior. In case you show minimum signs and symptoms, you should report to your treating oncologist so that they can prescribe you medicines accordingly and judge whether you would be a person who would require hospitalization versus whether you can be managed at home. There are some guidelines also which have been issued from our regulatory bodies. I think some people might be aware that NCCN network is a body of empaneled doctors from different fraternities who sit together and make guidelines to all cancer management. So certain guidelines have been issued from them in terms of the vaccination for cancer patients. So they say who are the patients who should be waiting before receiving their vaccine. So these are the exceptions. The cancer patients should be prioritized to get vaccine, except these some subgroup of patients who can differ. If a patient is going for a major surgery, then the vaccination has to be delayed for a couple of weeks. If patient has received a very intensive chemotherapy, as in patients who are receiving treatment for chemotherapy, myeloablative chemotherapy, then you have to wait till the absolute neutrophil count improves. That is, the white blood cells have neutrophils, monocytes, basophils, and eosinophils. The neutrophil count of the white blood cells has to recover before going for the vaccination. Thirdly, patients who have gone for transplants, like the stem cells or the chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, they also have to wait for 3 months after the transplant procedure. And if there are other patients who are ongoing normal chemotherapy, which is not myeloablative or radiation or immunotherapy or hormone therapy, they can very well go for this particular vaccination. So a few more questions which are popping in day in and day out in our clinic, I think, which should be talked about are that who all should be going for it. I think a few answers I've already put in there, that everyone has to go as per the guidelines except who are going for a transplant, major surgery, or myeloablative chemo. Otherwise, all patients who are ongoing treatment, who have undergone treatment, or have been survivor of cancer should go for the vaccination. Even the household, the attendants or the relatives should be vaccinated, because if the patient is vaccinated but people around you are not vaccinated, they can acquire the infection and transfer it on to you. Then the waiting, as I've already told you, only those who are going for these high-end bone marrow transplants, the stem cell therapy or the cellular therapy, are the ones who can wait for 3 months before recovery of their immunity and then go for vaccination. And apart from that, leukemia patients who have received any, have undergone any major surgery, they should also be waiting before vaccination. So this, I think this again is a repetition of what I said, that can we stop wearing masks? I think most of us have got fatigue, be it the healthcare people, be the commoners, everybody's getting fatigued, but see, we have no choice. I think despite being vaccinated, it is wise to continue to wear masks, continue to maintain social distancing and sanitization by washing or sanitizing your hand, and avoid public places as a preventive measure, because in countries where we thought that after the first wave that now everyone has been vaccinated and nothing will happen, we are still seeing surges of new variants of COVID. So we have to be prepared to keep ourselves protected from the coming variants by virtue of continuing to use the COVID appropriate behavior. So vaccine, this again is a frequently asked question. Can vaccine give me COVID? No, vaccine cannot give you COVID. There have been anecdotal cases where patients went for vaccination. The first dose, probably they were already infected or they developed an infection somewhere, but it cannot be attributed to the vaccine, because as vaccine does not have any live or a actually functional virus. Only the way you can protect is that you can only prevent the worsening by second dose. So people also ask, how early will I get the immunity? So first dose is not sufficient enough. 3 to 4 weeks after second dose, the immunity tends to build in. So this is something I think we don't have much data on, that whether the vaccine side effects will be worse in cancer patients. So there are not many studies to back this, but as in the experience in the clinic does suggest that probably there is not much of a difference. At least I have not encountered any such severe events in the patients who have been vaccinated ongoing treatment at my clinic. But it is encouraging to see that patients themselves demand that they should be getting vaccinated. And those who haven't commenced treatment, we prefer to get them vaccinated before commencement of treatment, because they will be visiting the hospital premises frequently. It is important to safeguard or to improve their immunity so that their public communication becomes more easy in comparison to those who have been not vaccinated. So what future risk does this COVID infection have on the cancer outcomes? I think I briefly touched upon in the first slide is that if this pandemic continues to go on, there will be a fear of reinfection, but I think vaccination will partially take care of it. There will be decreased follow-up and people coming back for their investigative workup because they will fear COVID. Again, vaccination helps in reducing that fear. There will be patients who will be sitting at home because of their fear and not coming to the hospital and coming to us in later stages. That again can be reduced if people get vaccinated. They will not fear coming out of their houses to get their investigative workup done. From the treatment aspect, again, vaccination ensures that we do not have to postpone the active treatment, and the treatment intensity need not be reduced if patients are vaccinated. So vaccine is helping you right from prevention till treatment to ensure that nothing is affecting your overall oncological outcome. So I think I have reinforced repeatedly that why vaccination is important for these particular patients. So I'll just summarize to say that do not wait. The earliest opportunity you get for vaccination, you should go for it, irrespective of whether you're receiving chemo, radiation, or immunotherapy. Only subgroup which really needs to be cautious is the one who have received any stem cell transplant therapy in the last 3 months or have gone for a myeloablative surgery, chemotherapy, or a major surgery in the last 2 weeks. Apart from the cancer patients and survivors, it is also important that all household contacts of these patients should also be vaccinated. And after vaccination, the COVID appropriate behavior in form of the SMS, that is the mask, sanitization, and social distancing, should not stop. Side effects are minimalistic. They are just like any other vaccine, which happens to be mild soreness around the arm area, fatigue, mild fever, headaches. And in case, despite all this, you have a doubt, you have some allergy history or some parameters, it is best to let the decision be taken by your treating oncologist rather than declaring yourself unfit for the vaccine. So I think that is the message we wanted to deliver. Thank you so much for your patient hearing, and I will be happy to take questions if any.
Thank you, ma'am, for taking us through and enlightening us about various aspects related to this. And we are sure that whatever you said, whatever awareness you created would be helpful for the doctors who have joined us. Now, what we will do is, if you have any questions to the viewers, if the viewer have any question, they can type it in the Q&A box below. Ma'am would be happy to answer them. We have few questions, ma'am. I'll just read it for you. Dr. Mangesh Bhalerao is asking, do we need booster dose in patients suffering from cancer, especially hematological cancers?
So the data for booster in our country is still not available. In US, the 6-month booster has already been in place. So I think we will have to follow our national norms. But I think the criteria would be from the antibody titers. Rather than giving empirically, the antibody titers would dictate whether boosters will be required in this patient. But in West, at least the AstraZeneca, they have already recommended a booster. So our country has still to take on it, because we will not be able to endorse a booster unless our national guidance imposes that.
Another question is from anonymous attendee. Any recommendation of post-exposure prophylaxis?
So as of now, there is nothing like a vaccine as after an exposure from the vaccination point of view. But as the contacts of COVID patients, like we have been doing, I think the same prescription wherein we are giving the antioxidants and azithromycin. For healthcare workers, prophylaxis, I think people have been giving ivermectin also, although data is not very substantial. So it is all, I would say, hospital specific. Your COVID committees define whether prophylaxis has to be given. I'm talking of our institutional practices. Here, ivermectin prophylaxis has been given to the immediate contacts who have been coming in contact with the COVID positive patient. But no role of vaccinating after getting in contact with someone.
One more question. Comments on use of biological used for cancer in COVID-19 management.
Pardon,
any role of biologicals in COVID-19 management?
Yes, so I think with the bevacizumab and many other molecules coming in, I think they were pumped in, especially in March, I think May and June, we were really falling short of these biologicals. So there is some data, I would not say it is emphatic, but there is some data that there is some benefit of these usage. I think under the sky, we have tested every drug available with this particular second wave. So there have been some cases where it has shown benefit, but I think the selection criteria is based on the markers, the CRP markers, and the overall patient's comorbidities where they need to be given. But I think if it is to be given, it has to be given well timed. It is the therapeutic window which has to be chosen correctly. If it is given in a very severe case where already lung damage has happened, the recovery is less, rather than it should be given at the moderate phase or when the need for ventilation has not set in. Because once the ventilation starts, the fibrosis sets in very early. But yes, biologicals were used left, right, and center in the second wave, that I know.
Dr. Anchita, she is asking, what should be the time gap between end of chemo or radiation therapy and vaccination if the patient has also undergone heart surgery in last 5 to 6 months?
So as I said, if there is a major surgery, heart surgery is a major surgery, a 2 weeks of gap is mandatory. For chemo and radiation, per se, there is no contraindication unless the chemo which you are receiving is myeloablative. Myeloablative chemos are given for myeloma patients, Hodgkin lymphoma patients, or leukemia patients. So these are the situations where you need to wait more. But any other chemo where your absolute neutrophil count, ANC values are above 1500, patient can very well safely go for the vaccine even during the course of treatment. Need not even wait for the treatment to stop.
We have received few questions in our WhatsApp box also. I'll just read it for you. This is as per the latest study which was published last month in Journal Cancer. The doctor is asking, patient with, the journal said that patient with hematological malignancy such as myeloma and Hodgkin lymphoma were less likely to respond to vaccination than those with solid tumors.
Yes, I think I have also gone through that, and definitely that is why I said the data overall for cancer patient efficacy is still not mature enough. So I think since January till June, we are now collecting that data. I think by end of the year we will have more evidence onto it. See, because these are the patients who are not capable to throw immune response. So when the immune response in their body is lesser, so probably the antibody generation has been lesser in compared to the rest of the population. So that is one area. I would say these are the gray areas which we will be clarifying over the next 5-6 months with more and more people being vaccinated.
Next question.
Probably these would be the ones actually who might be requiring a booster. But as of now, at least it is not there in the recommendation.
Next question, I think it is better that it should come from you. The answer should come from you. Many people with chronic disease such as cancer are still hesitant of vaccine efficacy because they think that the vaccine which was developed was very fast. The process was very fast. In 5 to 6 months, it was developed. So is there any efficacy issue? Your views on it?
So see, I think that concern came in January when Covaxin came in because it got an emergency approval. But I think you have to believe the fact that the drug regulatory bodies will not issue any guideline for usage unless they have ensured that at least the side effect profile is not very bad, which may be detrimental to the public who will use it. Efficacy, yes, I would say with the data which we had in January, the data which reached to us in May, and by the end of June, data is still pitching in. I think in May, it was being said that the Covaxin, whosoever received and then developed COVID, the chances of dying with that was 0.02%. For Covishield, the same data had come in at that time, 0.04%. But then the number of people who had received Covaxin was much lesser than who had received Covishield. So there is no head-to-head comparison and efficacy data onto that. I think these actually are the gray areas where efficacy, as I told you, every 3 months the data is changing. So yes, efficacy-wise, I think the decisions came in early because it was an emergency situation. But toxicity-wise, no drug regulatory body will allow vaccine usage unless it is safe to be given.
Another question which you have already spoken, you have already covered. It is saying that whether there will be any change in DNA of a patient, of a cancer patient. Will there be any change in DNA if he is taking vaccine? I think the question is like this.
So the concern came with Covishield. I think many of our hematology, So many of our hematology colleagues also said, see, finally it is an RNA virus, and RNA viruses, they have a tendency for some changes entailing into your body. But I think the concerns would not be the same for Covaxin. So the RNA vaccines have that mild fear, and I think a few articles also came in which were all over WhatsApp with regards to what damage this vaccine could cause to our future. But still, we do not have evidence in support. That particular publication which came, it was refuted badly that yes, it is not validated that these are changes which will be induced by these vaccines.
Last two questions, ma'am. First question is, can a patient receiving cytotoxic chemotherapy, targeted therapy and immunotherapy or radiation can take vaccine simultaneously during that particular cycle of treatment?
Yes. So in this context, it is clearly known that you need not stop treatment in between. Of course, since there are some fatigue and the side effects similar to the vaccine, I usually recommend that we do not take it on the same day. At least we keep a week's gap so that your overlapping symptoms don't bother you more. Otherwise, efficacy-wise, it has not been suggested by the guidelines that you need to stop treatment or you need to delay the vaccine. It is just that chemotherapies, radiation therapies also cause fatigue. They also cause body aches. So do not overlap them on the same day. Maybe take it over a weekend when there are less likely effects of the chemotherapy or the radiation ongoing.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that, ma'am. One last question. Is COVID vaccine anyhow influencing the future of cancer treatment in terms of its scheduling? In terms of patient scheduling? I think so. The question is like that.
So see, if you have a patient who was vaccinated prior to starting your treatment, your entire schedule is unharmed. You can continue to treat the patient just like any other patient. Whereas those patients who developed COVID during treatment, if they are not vaccinated, of course, you will have to stop the active treatment because there will be risks of the disease worsening. I'm talking of COVID. And by stoppage of treatment, the overall treatment time increases, which reduces the chances of cure. If I talk of diseases like head and neck cancer or cervix, with each passing day, the chances of cure would decrease by 1.5 to 2 days. So the scheduling will be affected if patient is not vaccinated and develops COVID during the course of treatment.
Thank you, Kanika ma'am, for taking all the questions. Any concluding remark from your side, the doctors who have joined us?
So I think the concluding remark is that we have to encourage our patients. They are very fearful. We have to give them that confidence that you have to go for the vaccine, help them choose what vaccine they want, because they are reading so much of myths all around them. Help them decide. At the most, be cautious by conducting a complete blood count, check the neutrophil values. If they are well in range, do get your patients vaccinated. It will build a confidence in you also for treating them. Vaccinated patients, even if they develop disease, maybe they will get rid of it in fewer days and come back for the treatment rather than ones who haven't been vaccinated. So I think that would be the order of the day, that ensure most people around you get vaccinated.
Once again, thank you, Kanika ma'am, for sharing your valuable time and knowledge with us. It was indeed a pleasure, and we hope that in future also we can meet on such important topics. Also, thanks to all the viewers who have joined us. So till the next time we meet, on behalf of complete team of RPG Life Sciences, stay safe, take care, and goodbye.